morning.
We are learning Mishna Sotah, Perek Test, Chapter 9, Mishnah Test, Mishnah 9. V'sharabu hareitzchanim. When murderers increased, Batla Egla Arufa. The practice of Egla Arufa was discontinued. See that? Once the murderers increased, Egla Arufa was discontinued. So the way they explain is like this. There came a period that there were several known murderers who killed many people. When the body of a murder victim was found, it was assumed that one of those killers was responsible. Therefore, the ritual of Egla Arufa, which is performed only when the murderer is unknown, was stopped. Now, as they point out here on the bottom, you still don't know exactly who did it, right? It's not like you know for sure. You don't know which one. Even if you can assume it had to have been one of those, one of those murderers, right? You still don't know which one. And I would add, and maybe again, for sure it's one of them. Maybe it could be somebody else. But okay, let's assume it's one of them because they were the ones who were operating these things. But you still don't know which one for sure. So on the bottom, they bring down, although they did not know which of these murderers killed the person whose body was found, the case was no longer one of complete uncertainty, and as such not fulfill the Torah's condition of it was not known who struck him. The Torah says about that the halach of Egla Arufa is performed when, as the Torah says, it was not known who killed him. Now, that means it has to be completely unknown. And here, we assume that it was one of these known murderers, we doesn't know which one. That's already enough that it's not falling under what the Torah says about it was not known who struck him. Now the Mishnah continues. V'shaba Eliezer ben Dinai. When Eliezer ben Dinai came on the scene, Utachina ben Prisha Hayanikra. He was called Tchina ben Prisha, meaning this Eliezer ben Dinai, he was a murderer. He was a hitman, whatever he was. He was a professional murderer. And in order to actually hide his identity, he called himself Tchina ben Prisha. Chazru l'kroise ben Aratzchan. In order to make known who he really was, they called him the murderous one. Meaning, this is the period when this happened. This period when they had to stop, when they stopped doing Egla Arufa because of the increase of murderers, was when Tchina ben Prisha came on, when this person, Eliezer ben Dinai, came on the scene. And just to kind of, show what kind of person he was, he changed his name not to be known. And people then called him, instead of trying to go with his old name, just called him Ben Aratzchan, which means the murderous one. Okay, so that's the first part. Now the next part of the Mishnah talks about something similar. Misharaba Menafim, when adulterers increased, Pasku Hamayim Hamorim, their bitter waters ended, meaning the Sotah water that would go ahead and be used to determine if a woman who went to seclusion had committed adultery or not, that was no more practiced once we came to a certain point of time that adulterers increased. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai hipsikan. The one who actually ended it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lived during the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, and it was he who then basically he was the one who stopped the practice of the bitter waters. Now, what's the basis for doing this? Shenamar, as the pasuk says, "Lef loy efkaid al b'naiseichem kisis nena." I will not examine your daughters when they commit harlotry. V'akaloiseichem kisin afafna, and your daughters-in-law when they commit adultery. Ki haim, for they, meaning the end of the pasuk not brought down in the Mishnayos, is for the men consort with harlots, etc. So this verse is interpreted here to mean the following: I will not examine, which means examine through what way? Through the bitter waters. I will not examine your wife with the bitter water when she is a saita, because your daughters and daughters-in-law are promiscuous and men go with harlots. When immoral behavior is common, as described in the verse, there are strong grounds for suspecting. Now listen to this explanation. It's very interesting. There are strong grounds for suspecting that the husband of a sotah committed the sin. That the husband of a sotah committed the sin of cohabiting with her, which makes the bitter waters powerless. Meaning, according to this explanation, which they bring down according to this reason they bring down from the Meiri, commentary of the Meiri, The reason that Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai decreed that's no longer going to be performed, the Sotah water, because it came to this point. It's not. It came to a point where the adultery was immoral behavior was common. Now, why does that stop the Sotah water? The explanation they give is because basically, if people lack self-control, then that means we learned previously that if a woman becomes a Sotah, her husband is forbidden to cohabit with her. If he does so, the Sotah water won't work. Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai felt that under these immoral behavior conditions, a husband is not going to hold himself back. He's not going to control himself, and therefore, therefore the waters aren't going to work. Which means we're erasing Hashem's name into the water for no good for when there's a good chance it's not going to work, and therefore he instituted that we stop doing it. Okay, the last part of the Mishnah is when these two sages, who were the leaders of the Jewish people at their time, when they died, batlu eshkolos. Eshkolos literally means clusters, but in this case it means scholars who knew the entire Torah ceased. Okay, we'll see what that means soon. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, when we have an allusion to this, or actually we see that the word eshkol, as they bring down here, the word eshkol refers to a person who Hashem considers precious, important, because it says, Ein eshkol lecho bikura ipsa nafshi, which means, pasuk reads, there is no eshkol to eat. My soul desires the first ripe fig. The pasuk then continues, the devout one has disappeared from the land, and one upright among men is no more. Meaning you see that these special people are called an eshkol. Literally means a cluster, but it's a way of expressing how precious they are to Hashem. So with the Lord, so you see that these righteous people, these special people, are referred to as eshkol. Eshkol is again a way of showing how he cherishes them. So here too, when it comes to the context of this Mishnah, which is talking about Torah scholars who knew the entire Torah, again we call them eshkolos. The same way the pasuk called the devout people eshkolos, we call these people eshkolos. Now here it's very interesting in the way they explain what it means exactly. They're eshkolos. What's the point exactly that these people who knew the entire Torah, they passed away, they ended? So they explain like this. First of all, this refers to exceptional scholars who complete Torah knowledge, whose complete Torah knowledge left no room for doubt or dispute. Now they elaborate on this. Until the era of these two sages, the Torah was transmitted from generation to generation exactly as it had been received at Sinai. Thus, there was never a disagreement about the law. The first dispute was between Yosef ben Ezer and Yosef ben Yehuda, which is recorded in Chagiga. This took place near the end of Yosef ben Ezer's life. So the point is that once these two sages, these two leaders of the Jewish people, which I believe they were the first of the zugais, I think they were the first of the pairs of where the Jewish people had one Nasi and one Av Bezdin. So when they were around, they still were not, their Torah knowledge was complete enough that, again, the transmission of Torah Shabbat, the oral law, was complete, wasn't lacking anything, wasn't missing anything, and therefore there were no disputes over that, over what the transmission of Torah Shabbat should be. But once they passed away, or according to the way they have here, at the end of Yosef ben Ezra's life, at the end of Yosef ben Ezra's life, where again, I guess because already he was old, he didn't have it like he used to. At that point already, we have the record. We have in Chagiga recorded the first dispute, which was between the next two leaders. Actually, not between the next two. No, the first dispute is Yosef ben Ezer and Yosef ben Yehuda. Yosef ben Ezer is the first one mentioned here. Okay. So towards the end of his life, there already was a machlekes between him and somebody else. So I guess towards the end of his life, he didn't remember his learning the same way. But the point is that once these people passed away, you have the Batla Eshkailas, those are the complete Torah knowledge, they passed away, and thus there was already now the point of disputes between the sages now became regular and commonplace. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.